Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now to review some of the headlines in today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Good morning, Emmanuel.
Good morning, Ruben.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tundu.
Yes,
good morning, Leila. Let's start with this day newspaper straight away. The lead story, Supreme Court upholds Okowa Ikpeazu Bello Ishaku's election. Yes, that is the end of the road as far as the contest for that, the governorship in those states are concerned, because now these governors can sit easy and face the task of governance. But if we look at the daily trust, it's not the same thing for seven other governors. Fate of 7 governors uncertain as Supreme Court clears Ikpeazu Okowa Ishaku Bello. 7 states still pending. For somebody like the governor of Imo State, there are about 4 that Emeka Ihedioha. There are 4 cases from different contestants. Hope Uzodinma is also challenging his election. Then, of course, Uche Nwosu, the son-in-law of Okorocha, is also challenging. So his own election is still pending at the Supreme Court. That of Adamawa State, Jibrila Bindo, is still being challenged. Then, of course, you have some other states, 7, including Benue, still being challenged by other contestants. For those governors, well, although if we go by the trend so far, no election has been upturned at that level. So let's hope that before long, the 2019 election, as it concerns the states, will be laid to rest for those governors to concentrate on issues of governance.
Well, but I think what is important, the bottom line, is the fact that we've seen more people, elected persons and aggrieved persons who think that they are the rightful winners, are not resorting to self-help and going through due process and respecting the rule of law and allowing the courts to play their own role, within the post-election phase. And I think that that is important. Before now, 7 governors also won at the level of the Supreme Court. And we had expressed concern that in those 7 states, including your state, Leila, I guess including our own state too, that there was some kind of slow motion. But since, the Supreme Court determined those matters, we've seen some, full speed activity in those states. But the good thing, of course, is that nobody has taken the law into his or her hands in the course of the elections. You can be sure those other governors whose cases are still pending, well, we'll see how it plays out, But the faith in the judiciary is something that is very important for our democratic process, and that's something that should be sustained.
Yeah. So far, APC controls 20 states, PDP 15, APGA 1. Will that change by the time the 7 states pending
states
will be concluded by the Supreme Court? So let's see how it pans out. Now, Amotekun, the Nigerian Tribune, as Operation Amotekun takes off today, our position, expectations by Southwest leaders. I don't believe in any partial Amotekun, that's Adebajo, Chief Ayo Adebanjo. It's a camouflage attempt to silence agitation for state police. Okoromo, that's Senator Okoromo. Idea long overdue, temporary means of tackling crimes, Gani Adams. Houses of Assembly must pass it into law. Bimbo Daramola, Alake Olugbon, Akintoye, Olajide Ohaneze, loud initiative. While other newspapers are also reporting similar story. The Punch newspaper, federal government interference, governors' intrigues threatening Operation Amotekun. 120 operational vehicles head for Ibadan as inauguration holds today. Dawn says operation not alternative army as Fireme IG meets. Dawn, that's the development agenda of Western Nigeria, yes, development agenda of Western Nigeria, that's done. Now, the Vanguard newspaper, insecurity, army, police frown as Southwest launches Operation Amotekun. We'll go ahead with launch done. We are not opposed to it, police. Those opposed to Amotekun are enemies of Yoruba, Are Adams. Now, according to the Vanguard report, the Southwest governors were invited to Aso Villa yesterday, where they met with the Inspector General of Police on the way forward as a result of opposition from the police and the army against the modus operandi.
Well, the first time we took on this subject, I had raised the concern about the politics of protection in Nigeria. Whether you are talking about the Egbesu boys or the Bakassi boys in the southeast, the Egbesu boys in South-South, the Hisba in northern Nigeria, or similar other groups in parts of Nigeria, arising from the fact that given the failure of the security agencies in Nigeria to protect lives and property, regions, stakeholders have resorted that they must come up with their own groups, the most popular being the vigilante groups that you have in virtually every state of the country. But when the Southwest then decided to come up with this Operation Amotekun, or if you like, Operation Leopard, because Amotekun is a Yoruba word, it means leopard, or the jaguar, which you have in South America. But in Africa, what we have is a leopard, so it's Operation Leopard. Now, I addressed the issue about who will control it, who will be in charge of the command. And it's very interesting that we now hear that even these 6 governors, each state contributing 20 vehicles, each governor trying to be involved, that there is now some kind of disunity among the governors. And I guess that that has to do with power play. So that's something that has to be worked out. 2, we raised the concern about, yes, what is the relationship between this Operation Amotekun and the traditional, state-controlled Nigerian security agencies, the police, the armed forces? And what we were told was that there was a meeting with the president, and he endorsed the idea. There was a meeting with the National Security Advisor, and he endorsed it. But now to hear that even the army and the police are uncomfortable with it, it means that something must have gone wrong. Leila, you raised the question, are they going to carry arms? If they're going to carry arms, what kind of arms? I think, Tundo, was it you, who raised the question about are they going to wear uniform so that we'll be able to identify them? So what we see is that maybe there are certain details that have not been properly worked out yet. In terms of principle, the objective is in order. It's a move towards community policing, or if you like, regional police, but there are details that need to be worked out. And we just hope that this Operation Amotekun will serve the purpose of protecting the people, will not become a threat to the people, will not become another agency for extortion, harassment, and intimidation.
The quest for who controls Amotekun amongst perhaps the governors, is it that one of the governors want to be the commander-in-chief of the Amotekun?
I don't know. We are just raising questions.
Well, but one thing we can also say is that this idea of Amotekun and other vigilante groups also ties to the philosophy of state police, which many have been clamoring for. Because when you have state police like these guys, they know the terrain better. They are closer to the people. Of course, they will add to the number of policemen so that Nigeria is properly policed. Let's hope that our legislators will also be thinking of this, because you only need to amend the Constitution to reflect that for state police to be a reality. So I think they should be also looking in that direction.
But whatever happens, rather than the police and the military saying that they are uncomfortable, what we would like to see perhaps will be some kind of synergy. As you said, these Amotekun, because they are community-based, they can share information, they can share intelligence.
That's their main
They can,
role,
strengthen the hands of the police in ensuring security in the Southwest.
Okay, let's move on to other issues. The Guardian newspaper. How government can stop wasting trillions on fuel importation, Stakeholders warn of forex scarcity, increased debt burden. CBN retains 65% loan-to-deposit ratio policy for banks. Now, if we look at the next paper, New Telegraph, Nigeria petrol imports go up 3 trillion in 2019. And of course, that report is coming from the PPRA, the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulation Agency. Well, if you look at that figure, that is something that is worrisome, that Nigeria, a member of OPEC, spend this much to import finished products into the country.
Well, the key question to ask is, when are we going to get our refineries working?
Yes.
Mele Kyari, the GMD of NNPC, says that that's one of his priorities.
Like every other former
If we get the
GMD.
refineries working,
don't they?
maybe there will be a difference. But let's take a short commercial break, and then we'll be right back with Emmanuel Efeni, reviewing top stories in today's newspapers around the world. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Still with us is Emmanuel Efeni, Arise News analyst, who has been reviewing top stories in newspapers from around the world. Now, Emmanuel Efeni, what's the next story?
Yes, let's move on to The Nation newspaper. Lawmakers to get INEC's electoral reform proposal. Agency makes far-reaching plans for 2023 polls. We've been expecting this, but not necessarily from INEC, but perhaps the presidency, that a bill should be sent to the National Assembly for the amendment to the Electoral Act 2010, which has been pending for some time. Recall that 4 times the bill was sent to the President, Muhammadu Buhari. 4 times he opted not to sign, giving different reasons at different times. Well, some may excuse him because he was a player ahead of the 2019 election. But now, ahead of the 2023 election, he is not going to contest, even if he is offered. We all know that. He's not constitutionally in a position to even contest. So now we expect this president to be in the forefront of electoral reform.
Well, 2 quick points. First, let me respond to what you have said. President Buhari has repeatedly said that he is committed to deepening the electoral process in Nigeria as part of his legacy. And he repeated that point in his New Year message to Nigerians. And we debated that. We had guests on this program who said, yes, that would be a good thing to see. Although there were also some persons like the present company to my left and right who were a little bit skeptical about the president giving himself a pass mark in terms of his administration's conduct of the 2019 general elections. So let us hope that he would abide by that promise. The second point is that the National Assembly has also made it clear through the Senate President, Ahmad Lawan, that this year, that one of the major priorities for the National Assembly will be the reform of the Electoral Act of 2010, as you quoted. The third point, of course, is the contest. After the 2019 general elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission conducted a series of stakeholder meetings to get feedback. And what we were told by the INEC chairman is that on the basis of the review that INEC conducted, certain amendments will be proposed. And I think that's the key point in this story. INEC now going forward on the basis of review and lessons learned and suggestions perhaps from stakeholders to make recommendations to the National Assembly. But definitely, you know, the Electoral Act needs to be amended. And you know, of course, that there are some Nigerians who have been saying that technology, there must be the use of technology, you know, there must be something, INEC must have a server. Some of those issues also that came out of the legal processes, the judicial processes, you know, I think they are important moving forward. So what it means is a democratic experience is a learning curve, But we must always show the capacity to learn, and the political leadership must have the will to deepen the electoral process in the national interest, not in personal interest.
Yes, Ruben, you know, I deliberately said the president should champion this reform.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, the buck stops at its table.
Yeah.
Especially in this matter, if he doesn't sign whatever proposal INEC is talking about,
Very right.
we will move forward.
You cannot be more correct.
Yes. And Ruben, lastly on this matter, the president told us that he tried to be president 3 times. He failed. But with technology, he became president. So he should be the champion of technology in the electoral process.
You're right.
Now, if we just move on to other newspapers across the Atlantic. Now, the Financial Times of UK, Trump steps back from brink with measured reaction to strikes. The president has toned down his rhetoric, but the way he couched it, as though the Iranians stepped back. But if you ask me, it was President Trump who stepped back from crossing the Rubicon, as it were, because the way he was going, threatening to strike all sides, even against international, disproportionate force. So he stepped back, and I think it's good for the world.
Yes.
It's good for the Middle East region, and of course, it's good for everybody concerned. Then it's good for Trump, because he will have gone down in history as somebody who precipitated a war that was unnecessary, and look at what perhaps he has cost.
I think it's very good for him because his base does not want a war. It's one of his electoral promises, and now he's sticking to that. He's shown himself as a tough guy,
So
but then he hasn't gone too far.
Really.
Yes, but he hasn't gone too far. So I think it is good for him.
Well, I think what we're dealing with here is what is the art of war, Sun Tzu. And, you know, both parties involved are trying to play a game of propaganda. And, you know, reading the fallouts, looking at the fallouts, I've seen that we're dealing with 2 different kinds of propaganda. The Iranians are insisting that 80 American lives were lost in that particular, you know, attack on the military bases belonging to the United States and NATO in Baghdad, in Iraq. But the Americans say, oh, there are no casualties.
All is well.
All is well, says
Trump.
President Trump. And President Trump says Iraq is standing down, which is his own phrase. Iran is standing down, which is his own phrase. But the Iranians, yes, they've said they don't want war, but they will defend themselves if need be. The Americans are even saying many of the missiles fired by Iran missed the target, and that they even had prior intelligence, and that they had protected American lives before the attack occurred in the first place, making it look that indeed the attack by Iran was just a face-saving. We may never know what the exact truth is, but whatever may have happened, the assassination of Qasem Soleimani and the militias of the Hezbollah, Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq is going to determine for a very long time the relationship between the Middle East and also the United States and its allies. And let nobody assume that this is the end of the matter. No, that is the point I'm making. Iran may have taken a tactical approach to just make substantial noise. They said it will not be a proxy war, that they would respond directly from Iran, and they did. Okay, but that's not the end of it. You don't know what will happen. You don't know the kind of response that you will find from the pro-Iranian militias.
Any other response is not from Iran.
Well, that's one point. The second point.
The Supreme Leader wants them to carry on. He's not satisfied.
The second point has to do with President Trump. Yesterday, there was a briefing on what happened in Iran, and both Democrats and Republican senators were not happy with what they got. The briefing was supposed to go for 90 minutes. State House, well, I said State House, White House officials, administration officials spoke for 75 minutes. And that includes the director of the CIA, the director of national intelligence, the Joint Chiefs Chairman, Mike Miley, the Defense Secretary, Mark Esper, and other officials. Now, the Republicans, the Democrats, they're saying that they are not convinced that there was a justification for that attack on Iran, and that it looked like, President Trump just acted unilaterally. And I'm looking forward to what will happen today at the National Security Council, where there will be a meeting on the matter, and also in the House, where the Democrats will take a decision on the war powers resolution, to limit the capacity or the powers of President Trump to attack Iran going further. The administration is insisting that they are acting on the 2002 authorization of the use of force, which was used to go to Iraq, and that this attack was on Iraqi ground. But that, I think, is not something that many Americans are convinced about.
It's a most unconvincing argument. I mean, they're only in Iraq to support Iraq in the fight against ISIS. That is their sole mandate. To extend that to picking off who they deem as terrorists is completely wrong. And I feel, yes, it's really good that Donald Trump stepped back from the brink. But this, for me, just seems like a pointless frolic when you look at it. Really, what was the point of that whole exercise? It was a mistake. Shouldn't have bothered. Yeah.
Well, for Iran, their response was measured. And I think it was deliberate, because if 80 Americans die, you can't, President Trump can't cover that.
And Trump went as far as saying that.
But I think what the Iranians did, by informing the Iraqis ahead,
the Iraqis
informed the Americans, and they were able to move their, perhaps, soldiers to safe places. And, well, it's okay, all well and good. The world is better for it that this crisis did not escalate beyond what we already
there's an indication of de-escalation. But let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yes. Okay. Now, in the UK, all the front pages of the different newspapers are carrying the story. The Guardian newspaper, let's start with the Guardian. Harry and Meghan to step back. Yes, this is a stepping back. To step back as senior royals. Announcement follows complaints of media bullying and smears. Let's look at how other newspapers are reporting this story. The Times, Harry and Meghan quit roles, palace splits. Then, the Daily Mail, Queen's fury as Harry and Meghan say, we quit. Then it went further to say, dramatically stepped down as senior royals without telling Her Majesty, Charles, or William.
That's the part for me that's dreadful. At the end of the day, the Queen is Harry's grandmother, but she's also his boss. Who leaves a job, who just walks out of their job and lets the employer hear on TV? That's a part of the report I said. So I don't know if it's true, but it's been reported. If they really did that, then that is dreadful. Otherwise, they have their rights to live whatever kind of life they want. But I do wonder what the point of all this is.
They want to work towards being financially independent.
So this is my issue. I think all the criticisms about them using taxpayers' funds and whatever have gotten to them. All the general criticisms have gotten to them. And it's a shame to let trolls dictate your life.
But I think they also just, they're at a point where they also want to just live their lives now, maybe without the heavy influence of the firm. Well, are they not moving to Tanzania as well? They're trying to run away.
Just before that, Ruben, if I just read this excerpt from their release. After many months of reflection and internal discussions, we have chosen to make a transition this year in starting to carve out a progressive new role within this institution.
Well, Emmanuel, we have to take a break now. But the question to ask is Prince Harry a reincarnation of King Edward VIII?
Yes, with the American divorcee.
And it's Meghan Markle, another Wallis Simpson.
Well, we can
but we don't have more time.